You are on the What I Never Saw channel. Enjoy watching.
Started on a Tuesday, sometime around 3 in the afternoon. I was sitting in my home office, trying to push through the last couple hours of work. It was one of those gray, slow days. Not rainy, not sunny, just kind of suspended in a bland nothingness. I remember staring at a spreadsheet, wishing I could justify logging off early, when a familiar chime from my phone broke the silence. A new upload to the shared cloud album Amber and I used. It was nothing out of the ordinary. Amber was a serial photo dumper. She dropped pictures in there without warning. Random *TS from work trips, coffee she liked, sunsets she saw on her evening walks. Little stuff. Thoughtless, casual. She never curated anything. She just tossed them into the album like dropping coins in a jar. Most of the time, I barely looked at them. But something that day made me open the notification. I wish I hadn't. It was a photo taken at a cafe. Not a selfie. Someone else had taken it, probably a waiter or someone they asked to snap a quick pic. Amber was sitting at a small, round table across from a man I didn't recognize. Her body was angled toward him, shoulders relaxed, posture casual. She was leaning in slightly, her elbow propped up, hand close to his. Too close. Their fingers weren't touching, but they might as well have been. The space between them was charged, not dramatic, but charged. Familiar in a way that didn't feel professional. What got me the most was her face. She was smiling, but not the way you smile for the camera. It was softer, natural. The kind of smile you only give someone when you forget you're being watched. The kind I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I stared at it for a while, unsure of what I was even looking at. At first, I didn't jump to conclusions. I told myself what any reasonable person would. It's just a photo. It doesn't prove anything. People lean in when they're talking, people laugh, people look comfortable. That doesn't mean something's going on, right? But the longer I looked, the harder it got to quiet the noise in my head. I didn't recognize the guy. That's what got me first. I like to think I have a decent grip on who Amber works with. We've gone to enough office parties. I've seen enough Slack notifications pop up when her phone was unlocked. But this guy? Never seen him before. So I did what any husband with a buzzing gut instinct does. I asked. I sent a simple text. Hey, who's the guy in the cafe pic you just uploaded? She called me less than a minute later. That fast. Hey babe, she said, trying to sound breezy. You mean the one with the coffee cups? Yeah. Oh, that's just Rob, she said quickly. He's new on the marketing side. We had to meet a client halfway between our offices, and the cafe was the only quiet spot nearby. Okay, I said. I waited. What's up? She asked after a second, and her tone shifted slightly. A kind of tightness I'd started noticing more lately, like she was already preparing to be annoyed. Nothing, I said. Just looked. Close, that's all. That's when she got defensive. You're seriously analyzing a photo now? She said, and I could already hear it. The wall going up, the blame deflection starting. Ethan, it's just a picture. God, do you really think I'd put something inappropriate in a shared album? That would be pretty dumb, don't you think? I didn't say it was inappropriate, I said, careful. I don't know this guy. You never mentioned him. We work together. That's all. I don't give you a rundown every time someone new joins the team. Her voice was hard now, clipped. You're reading way too much into this. It was a work thing. The part that still sticks with me? She could have left it there. She could have said, I get it, it looks weird, but I promise it's nothing. That would have been enough. Maybe. But instead, she went on the offense. She accused me of being paranoid, insecure, said it was really exhausting to always feel like she had to explain herself for doing her job. That last part hit different. Her tone had changed entirely. Not angry, sharp. Not like someone defending the truth, but like someone trying to shut a door quickly before you saw what was inside. I didn't say much after that. Just nodded through the phone and said, All right, sorry I asked. But the moment I hung up, I opened the photo again, and I didn't look at him. I looked at her. It wasn't the smile anymore, not even the closeness. It was the way she was present. The way her entire posture leaned toward him without reservation. She wasn't tense. She wasn't guarded. She wasn't keeping up appearances. She was just there, and comfortable, and real. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her look like that around me. It's weird how a single moment, a single frame, can start unraveling months of buried feelings. That picture didn't show anything definitive. It wasn't graphic or even inappropriate, not really. But it was honest. Caught something that words couldn't hide. The next hour was a blur. I tried to work. I stared at my monitor, but my mind kept drifting. My thoughts looped. Who took the photo? Why did she upload it so casually if there was nothing to hide? Why did she get so defensive? Who was Rob, really? I found myself pulling up her LinkedIn. Pathetic, maybe, but I was looking for him. I scrolled through her coworkers, checked who had liked her recent posts. I didn't find him. No Rob in marketing, at least not publicly. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. My stomach churned in that low, steady way it does when your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. It wasn't just the photo. Not really. It was everything it stirred. The past few months had already been strange. Amber had been busier, less affectionate. She'd taken to sleeping on the edge of the bed, her back always to me. Nothing blatant, just the kind of slow drift that doesn't feel like much until one day you look up and realize you're no longer standing on the same shoreline. That photo, it wasn't the beginning of something. It was the moment I realized the beginning had passed, and I'd missed it. The doubt wasn't loud at first. Crept, quiet, calculating. It didn't accuse, it questioned. And once those questions started forming, they never stopped. They whispered behind every look she gave me, every vague, "I'll be home late," text. Every moment her phone screen lit up, and she tilted it just out of my view. I tried to shake it off. Told myself not to jump to conclusions. But something had shifted. The truth, I think, had been sitting with me for a while. That photo just turned on the light. After the photo, things didn't explode, not outwardly. There was no dramatic confrontation, no suitcase by the door, no yelling match in the kitchen. Life kept moving on the surface. We still cooked dinner, still went to sleep in the same bed, still smiled for photos when we had to. But something had broken inside me, something subtle and quiet. The picture hadn't shown me anything conclusive, but it gave shape to the feeling I'd been carrying around for months. The feeling I had been trying so hard to rationalize away. And once that doubt took hold, it didn't stay small. It grew fast, like ivy curling around old bricks, cracking everything that used to feel solid. That night after she went to sleep, I lay next to her and thought about all the moments I had brushed off. I couldn't stop thinking about them. Small, seemingly innocent things that now took on new meaning. Her phone habits, for starters. Amber used to be careless with her phone. Not in a bad way, just relaxed. She'd leave it on the kitchen counter when she showered. She'd hand it to me without hesitation if she wanted me to change a playlist or check a message. But lately, it was always on her. She started taking it into the bathroom, sleeping with it face down on her nightstand. The screen would light up at odd hours, and she'd roll over, thumb in motion before I could even glance in that direction. I remember the first time I caught her tilting the screen away from me. She didn't even think about it, muscle memory, like someone who's gotten used to hiding. And then there were the work events. More of them lately. Dinners, weekend retreats, last-minute overnight trips that always seemed to pop up with little warning. I used to be invited to a few of them, office holiday parties, summer mixers, but lately I was never mentioned. When I asked if spouses were going, she'd say something like, "Oh, it's just a team thing." Or, "It's kind of informal. Wouldn't be your scene. Wouldn't be my scene." The more I replayed those comments, the more they sounded like scripts. Rehearsed, prepared. She'd come home late sometimes, saying she lost track of time, traffic was bad, a meeting ran over. And at first I believed her, because that's what you do when you trust someone. You believe them even when the evidence doesn't line up. You give them the benefit of the doubt, even when it feels like the doubt is outweighing the benefit. I remember one night in particular. She came home after 10 p.m., hair slightly tousled, wearing a new blouse I hadn't seen before. I asked if she had fun at her work dinner. She smiled, but it wasn't a full smile. More like a placeholder. "Yeah," she said, walking past me to drop her purse on the counter. "It was fine." I hugged her. She hugged back, stiffly, almost like it was obligatory. And when I pulled away, there was a scent I didn't recognize. Not hers. It wasn't a perfume, not floral or musky. It was something masculine, sharp, clean. Not cologne I owned, but familiar enough to know it didn't belong to me. I asked about it. She said it must have been from one of her coworkers. We were crammed into a booth. Then she laughed. Too hard. Like she was trying to steer the conversation in a direction that didn't matter. That night, she showered longer than usual. When she came to bed, she was quiet. And I told myself not to overthink it. That she was tired. That she worked hard. That I was being dramatic. But the truth is, I knew. Not with certainty. Not with proof. But in that bone-deep way you just know something has changed. Not because someone told you, but because their energy told you. Because your body felt the shift before your mind caught up. And the more I let myself look, the more I saw. Physical contact between us had dwindled. I'm not just talking about S*X. I'm talking about the little things. The hand on my shoulder when she passed by. Her legs draped over mine on the couch. The way she used to kiss my cheek when I brought her coffee in the morning. All those gestures had vanished gradually, replaced with polite nods and the occasional side hug. And when I reached for her, she flinched sometimes. Not like she was afraid, just like she didn't want to be touched. I told myself we were going through a phase, that she was stressed, that maybe it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't being present enough, attentive enough. I tried to initiate date nights. I planned a weekend away in Asheville, just the two of us. She said she couldn't take time off. A big campaign was launching, maybe next month. But next month never came. She started wearing makeup on weekends. Amber was never the kind to dress up on her days off. She was beautiful effortlessly so. But now, she spent time curling her hair before going on errands. Her outfits were more polished. New blouses, subtle perfume, lipstick I didn't recognize. I remember watching her in the mirror one Saturday as she got ready to go grocery shopping. She wore a loose-fitting sweater, but underneath, I caught a glimpse of lace. I asked if she was meeting someone. She laughed. Too hard again. What, like a secret boyfriend at Whole Foods? She said I was being ridiculous, that I needed to trust her, that if I kept acting paranoid, I was going to push her away. That one stuck with me. How do you respond to that without sounding like a cliché? I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the math stopped adding up. I felt like I was holding on to a story that no longer made sense. The characters had changed, the tone had shifted, but I was still pretending we were in the same chapter. I started noticing the way she was always slightly out of reach. In every room there was a distance between us. Not just physical, emotional. She was occupied, distracted. Her eyes didn't linger on mine anymore. Conversations felt like obligations. Her attention wandered mid-sentence, and sometimes she'd look at her phone and smile. A tiny, involuntary grin, the kind that never showed up when she was talking to me. That smile wasn't for me anymore. And then there were the patterns. That's what got me in the end. The patterns that finally made sense. Every time she had a late night, her mood would be lighter the next morning. She'd hum in the kitchen, pour herself coffee and scroll her phone, lost in some private amusement. Every time she said she was working over the weekend, her clothes were sharper. Every time I asked questions, she responded with a counterattack, accusing me of jealousy, of control, of not trusting her. But when you've spent years learning the rhythm of someone, the way they move through space, the things they say when they mean something else, the way their voice changes when they lie, you notice when the rhythm skips. I knew her tells. I knew her cadence. And she wasn't speaking in the same melody anymore. The worst part? I still loved her. Even in the confusion, even in the quiet resentment building in my chest. I still wanted to reach across the bed and pull her closer. Still wanted to believe there was a version of this where we could fix things. I just didn't know how to ask for that without sounding desperate. But the moment I admitted to myself that something was really wrong, that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't inventing shadows, I started to pull back. Just a little. Enough to observe. And what I saw only deepened the fracture. She was already gone. Maybe not physically. Maybe not even emotionally. Not entirely. But something had shifted inside her, and she hadn't told me about it. She didn't invite me into the process. She had made a decision, slowly, quietly, to detach. And I was just now catching up. It happened on a Wednesday. I remember because I was supposed to be on a work trip, a conference 2 states over. I'd left that Tuesday morning, suitcase in hand, telling Amber I'd be gone until Friday evening. She barely looked up from her phone when I walked out the door. Just gave me a distracted have a good time and a kiss on the cheek that felt absent. That was the last thing she ever said to me as my wife, not just in title but in presence, in spirit. What she didn't know was that the trip got canceled last minute. Some technical issue with the venue, water damage or power outage. I forget. My coworkers scattered back home, annoyed and texting group chats about wasted time. I could have called Amber, of course. Let her know I was coming back early. But I didn't. I don't know why. No, that's not true. I do. There was something inside me. A quiet pull, a tug at the base of my spine, that told me not to announce my return. Not yet. It felt like my last sh*t at clarity. Like I had been staring at a puzzle missing its final piece. And this was my chance to see the whole thing. Not in theory, not in implication, but in reality. Raw and direct. So I drove. No music, no phone calls, just the sound of the highway and my own mind playing loops of doubt and half-truths. It was a long drive. I had plenty of time to think. Part of me hoped I'd walk through the door and find nothing unusual, that I'd catch Amber making tea, maybe in one of my old t-shirts, humming some song under her breath, that she'd be surprised, annoyed even, that I didn't call first, that we'd argue about boundaries and privacy and maybe laugh about it later. But another part of me, the part that had been keeping score in silence, knew better. It was just after 6:30 p.m. when I pulled up to the house. The driveway was half full, her car was there, but another one wasn't. Not yet, at least. The porch lights were on, curtains drawn. Everything looked normal, a lie in perfect stillness. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance. I don't know why I did that either. Maybe I just needed the extra time, needed to steel myself. Or maybe, deep down, I didn't want her to hear me pull in. By the time I got to the front door, I could hear music, soft, low, and distinctly not the kind of stuff Amber normally listened to. A jazz playlist, something smooth and vintage. I stood there for a second, hand on the doorknob, heart pounding. And then I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not something bad, actually, it was the opposite. It was too good. The faint scent of cologne, not mine, mixed with something like wine and citrus. There was a jacket draped over the back of a chair in the hallway. It wasn't mine either. The living room lights were dimmed. Candles on the table. A wine bottle half empty with 2 glasses. That's when I heard it, laughter. A man's voice. Upstairs. It was faint but clear. Confident. Comfortable. I didn't move right away. I just stood there, frozen in the entryway, heart thudding like a drum inside my ribs. I could hear them talking. Muffled words. A laugh again. And then footsteps. They weren't trying to be quiet. And the bedroom door upstairs? It was open. Just slightly. I walked slowly. Every step up the stairs felt heavier than the last. The hallway light was off, but enough glow from the bedroom spilled out that I could see. The door was cracked, just enough to give me a sliver of a view. And what I saw didn't surprise me. It didn't explode me either. It didn't send me into a rage or a panic. It was worse than that. It made me still. There they were. Her and someone else. I didn't recognize him, tall, dark hair, clean cut. He was laughing at something she said. Her head was thrown back. The same laugh she used to give me when we were in bed and everything felt light and unfiltered. She looked happy, and he touched her like it was normal, like he'd done it 100 times before. I watched them for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 15. Then I turned and walked back down the stairs without a word. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every corner felt foreign, like I was intruding on someone else's life. I didn't slam the door. I didn't call out her name. I didn't even text her. I just walked to my car and sat there in the quiet. I stared at the steering wheel. My fingers trembled slightly, but I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't shaking with rage. I just sat. The confirmation didn't bring relief. It didn't satisfy. It just made everything clear. The war inside me, the doubt, the internal debates, the late nights wondering if I was being paranoid, was over. I finally had my answer. And answers don't always come with closure. They just come. The next morning I returned. Not to confront her. Not to talk. I didn't even wait for her to wake up. I walked in while the house was still quiet, packed a small bag, documents, laptop, a few clothes, and left. I didn't take anything sentimental. Not the framed photos on the bookshelf. Not the jacket she bought me last Christmas. I didn't even take my favorite hoodie. It felt like holding on to a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. The only thing I left was a note. Not dramatic. Just one line, scribbled on a torn envelope I found in the junk drawer. Don't call. I saw everything. I don't know how she reacted. I never asked. Never checked. Instead, I checked into a hotel that night. One of those bland, highway-side ones with bad coffee and scratchy towels. It was cold and sterile and somehow comforting. For the first time in months, I wasn't pretending. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at a Waffle House across the parking lot, and realized I hadn't eaten all day. I didn't feel hungry. I didn't feel much of anything. That night, I slept better than I expected. Not peacefully, not yet, but deeply. The kind of sleep that comes when your body stops bracing for something you've already survived. In the morning, I opened a blank document on my laptop and started listing everything I needed to change. Bank accounts, passwords, mailing address, insurance, phone plan. One by one, I began cutting the strings. Not out of spite, not out of hate, out of necessity, out of clarity. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not friends, not family. I wanted the story to settle before I handed it to anyone else. I wanted to live with the truth for a little while, quietly, like a wound that needed to breathe before it could scar. Eventually, I reached out to a divorce attorney. I found his name online. He answered on the second ring, professional, calm. I told him what had happened in plain terms. No embellishment, just facts. He asked if I wanted to confront her. I said no. He asked if I had proof. I said I didn't need it. He asked if I was ready. And I paused, not long, but long enough. Then I said, yeah, I am. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't the kind of silence you feel when someone's giving you the cold shoulder, or when the air between two people turns thick with unspoken words. It was clean, cold, sure, but peaceful in a way I didn't expect. It was the kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Windows rattled, ground soaked, but the sky suddenly wide and honest. Amber didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't even try to track me down. Not the first day, not the second. I half expected her to show up at the hotel, knock on the door with some explanation ready. But no. Days passed, and I heard nothing. Took me a while to understand what that silence really meant. She had already let go, long before I ever packed my bag. The moment I stepped out that door, she didn't try to stop me because, in her mind, I'd already left. Not physically, but emotionally. She'd probably rewritten the story already. Told herself we were already drifting, that we were broken before this, that my walking away was just the natural conclusion to a marriage that had quietly collapsed long before anyone noticed. But that wasn't true. I hadn't left. I stayed through the slow disconnection, through the excuses, through the weeks of feeling like a stranger in my own home. I stayed because I believed love was enough, or at least supposed to be. I stayed because I kept thinking we'd find our way back, that we'd be honest again, that one day she'd look at me like she used to. But love without honesty becomes a leash, and I wasn't going to choke on it anymore. So I left. After 3 days in the hotel, I found a small place on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom rental with old floors and weak water pressure. The furniture didn't match. The windows fogged up in the morning. But it was mine. I could breathe there, and that meant more than any of the comforts I'd left behind. I furnished it slowly, piece by piece, as money allowed. Fold-out couch. Hand-me-down dining table from a guy I met on Craigslist. A mattress on the floor at first until I could afford a proper frame. It was humble but honest. There was no smell of perfume I didn't recognize. No half-hearted explanations. No tension hiding behind pleasantries. Just space. Quiet, steady, welcome space. The days started to find rhythm. I shifted to freelance work, smaller contracts, less structure, but more freedom. It gave me time to think, to reset. I started waking up early again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. There's something comforting about being awake before the world expects anything from you. I'd make coffee and sit on the small balcony, even when it was cold, wrapped in an old hoodie, watching the street below, letting the light come up inch by inch. No sound, no demands, just stillness. That stillness gave me back something I hadn't realized I'd lost. My own company. At first, it was uncomfortable. I kept waiting for a message, some sign that Amber wanted to talk, to fix things, to fight for what we had. But nothing came. And the longer the silence stretched, the more I understood she didn't want to fight. Because, in her mind, the fight was already over. And maybe, if I'm being honest, I didn't want to fight anymore either. Because what were we fighting for? A version of us that only existed in memory? A relationship built on a trust she had already traded for late nights and hidden smiles? One afternoon, I scrolled through old photos, something I had avoided for weeks. There we were, smiling at a wedding, laughing at a beach, arms wrapped around each other at a New Year's party. I stared at those pictures and tried to remember what it felt like to be that version of myself, the man who believed in the permanence of us. But I didn't feel like him anymore, and she wasn't the same woman either. I wasn't angry. I wasn't grieving in the way people expect. I wasn't punching walls or sobbing into pillows. What I felt was more muted, more sobering. Loss not of a person but of a future. We had made plans. We had painted this vision of what our life would be. 2 kids, a backyard, holidays filled with family. And maybe those plans were never real. Maybe we said those things because that's what people say when they're trying to make sense of love. But even so, letting go of that imagined life hurt in its own quiet way. And yet, something strange began to happen. The further I got from her, the more I remembered who I was before her. The things I used to love, the people I used to call, the version of me that wasn't constantly questioning his worth. I started reading again. Actual books, not just scrolling articles out of boredom. Cooked, badly at first, but I learned. I burned a lot of eggs. Set off the smoke alarm once trying to make steak. But there was joy in it. Messy, fumbling joy. I even reached out to a few old friends. Ones I had let drift during the years of coupledom. We got beers, caught up. None of them asked too many questions. The ones who mattered just said, "Glad to see you," and meant it. That meant more than I expected. And slowly, I started healing in ways I didn't know I needed to. Some days were better than others. Of course they were. Some mornings I woke up with a strange tightness in my chest. Like something was missing. A ghost limb. I'd instinctively reach for the other side of the bed, still expecting her there. My fingers would find only cool sheets. But I stopped checking her socials. I stopped rereading old texts. I stopped replaying the night I walked in on her. The laughter, the open door, the look on her face I never want to remember. I stopped needing answers, because answers wouldn't change the outcome. She made her choices, and I made mine. I started journaling. Not because I thought it would be profound, but because I needed somewhere to put the noise. Every night I wrote a single page. Whatever came out. No editing, no grammar checks. Just raw, unfiltered thought. At first, it was all about her. But then, slowly, it became about me. What I wanted. What I missed. What I feared. What I hoped for. I wrote one night, "I'm not broken. Just in between." And that's what it felt like, not destroyed, just paused. Like I was standing in a space between two lives. The one I had and the one I hadn't met yet. People talk a lot about closure. But I don't think closure is something someone gives you. It's something you choose. It's when you decide the pain doesn't get to own the next chapter. Amber didn't give me closure. She gave me silence. But in that silence, I found something better. Freedom. Not the wild, reckless kind. Not the sort where you party and post photos to make your ex jealous. I'm talking about the quiet, honest freedom of being exactly who you are, without having to apologize for it. The freedom to heal on your own timeline. The freedom to breathe in your own space. The freedom to be alone, and okay with it. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't afraid of that anymore. I didn't need someone else to make me whole. I just needed to come back to myself. And I was on my way. A little over a month had passed since I left. 38 days to be exact. Not that I was keeping track, not consciously. But my brain seemed to know. Some part of me kept ticking off the days like notches on a prison wall. Each morning was a little easier. Each night felt a little less hollow. I wasn't over it, not completely, but I was no longer drowning. Then came the barbecue. It was thrown by a couple we both used to know, Hannah and Derek. We weren't close, but close enough that the invite came in via group text. I almost deleted it without answering. Social events still felt strange. I hadn't told everyone what had happened between Amber and me. Only a few people knew the full story, and the rest, well, I let them assume whatever was easiest for them to swallow. But something made me go. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that I could exist in the same circles again. Maybe I wanted to be around people who didn't look at me like I was fragile. Or maybe I was just tired of my own company. The walls in my apartment had stopped echoing back anything useful. So I went. It was one of those mild Sunday afternoons, warm but not stifling, with the smell of grilled food floating through the backyard. There were lawn chairs, red plastic cups, people laughing at inside jokes I was no longer part of. For a while I stayed near the edges, smiled, nodded, said, "Yeah, things are good," whenever anyone asked how I was doing. It wasn't until I heard her voice that my stomach dropped. Not Amber. Shelby. Amber's sister. We were never especially close, but we had a kind of mutual respect. She was blunt, sharp-tongued, always the first to call Amber out on her drama. At least that's how it used to be. When things with Amber started unraveling, I never reached out to Shelby. I figured she'd take her sister's side, or worse, that she already knew. I turned and there she was, drink in hand, sunglasses on, surrounded by 3 or 4 people near the patio table. She was in the middle of telling some kind of story, something about relationships and breakups, and I knew instantly I was part of the punchline. "And there he is," she announced as she spotted me, laughing in that loud, theatrical way that made everyone else stop and look. "Speak of the devil," she added, raising her cup like a toast. I froze. "Come on, Ethan," she called out. "You remember how to take a joke, right?" Everyone laughed. That awkward kind of laugh people use when they're not sure what the rules are anymore. Not cruel, just ignorant. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't understand the context. They didn't realize that whatever Shelby was referencing, whatever private joke they'd made out of my collapse, wasn't funny. I forced a smile. The kind that stretches your face but doesn't touch your eyes. I nodded at her and said, "Of course," like it didn't gut me. She laughed again and turned back to her circle, launching into a new story before I even reached for a drink. I stood there a few minutes longer, pretending I wasn't thinking about leaving. I even tried to laugh at someone else's joke. But everything felt muffled, like I was hearing the party through a wall of glass. After 10 more minutes, I quietly slipped out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't make a scene. I just walked back to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the steering wheel. That laugh, her laugh, stuck with me. Not because it was especially cruel, but because of how casual it was. How unbothered. How it made my pain into something small enough to pass around at a party. On the drive home, I kept replaying it in my head. Her voice, her tone, the way no one there thought to ask, "Hey, maybe that's not okay." Maybe don't make a joke out of the guy whose marriage just exploded. Maybe don't mock the one person who didn't lie. But no one said that. They laughed. And it broke something in me I didn't know was still intact. It wasn't about Shelby. Not really. It was about what her laughter represented. The final crack in whatever remained of the life I had with Amber. The confirmation that even her family had moved on from the wreckage. That I was the only one still holding onto the dust. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even pour a drink. I just sat in the dark, hands folded, staring at the wall like it owed me an explanation. And then, almost exactly a month later, 31 days after that barbecue, Shelby messaged me. It was late, nearly midnight. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but something about the name made me pause. I opened the message. Hey, I don't know if I should be texting you. I've been thinking about that barbecue. I owe you an apology. I read it 3 times before responding. Okay. A few minutes later, she replied. What I said. How I laughed at your expense. That wasn't fair. I didn't know everything then. I do now. Amber told me everything. I stared at the screen, unsure what everything meant. I didn't ask. Instead, I typed, thanks. I appreciate the message. She responded, would you be willing to meet up? Just to talk. I promise I'm not trying to stir anything. I just think there's some stuff I should have said earlier. I didn't answer right away. I set my phone down and finished brushing my teeth, letting the message sit there, buzzing with subtext. Part of me wanted to say no, shut the door, leave everything in the past. But another part of me, the part that still believed in loose ends, told me it might be worth hearing what she had to say. So I agreed. We met a few days later at a quiet little cafe downtown. The kind where nobody knows your name and nobody cares what you're doing. I got there early, ordered black coffee, sat by the window. She walked in 5 minutes late, looking nervous. No sunglasses this time, no entourage, just her. Thanks for meeting me, she said as she sat down. I nodded. You said you wanted to talk. She folded her hands on the table. I was wrong about you. I thought you'd left because you couldn't handle the work. Because you gave up. That's what Amber told me. I stayed quiet. She left out a few details, Shelby added. Did she tell you about the guy? I asked. Shelby nodded. Yeah, eventually. She didn't want to at first. Said it was complicated. Said you were distant. Said a lot of things that made her feel like the victim. I let out a small laugh. Not amused, just tired. I believed her, she said. And I used your pain as a punchline. That's not okay. I'm sorry. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it. The sincerity. The guilt. I appreciate that, I said. She sipped her drink, then added, I think she's lost a lot more than she realizes. She thought you'd come back. Even after everything. She never asked me to. She didn't think she had to, Shelby said. That was her problem. She thought you'd always be waiting. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Before we parted ways, she stood and said, I'm not taking sides. I'm just trying to make things right where I can. You deserved better, Ethan.